There are over 100 different species or races that you can play as your Starfinder character. And among the many options that you can play, telepathic mold that feeds off of your emotions is one of them. There is obviously a little bit more to it than just being evolved cheese, and I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want to eat it. One variation of this mold is a form that is coalesced or gelled together through the growing colonies. The other variation is a creature or a life form that has been infected by these spores and has now reached an uplifted state. More on that in a minute. Today's video was voted on by my patrons over on Patreon. If you want to get a voice in what I produce next, then please consider joining us over there on Patreon. Now, let's talk about the Entu colonies. Entu colonies begin their life in a rather unremarkable way. They start off as a collection of spores, and slowly over time they coalesce into a life form, a being. And throughout this evolutionary collection building process, they form neural pathways. They form their mycelia, which perform very important functions for the Entu colonies, such as gathering information about the colony's environment. During their first weeks of life, the Entu colonies more resemble slime or a puddle of goo. If you found one, you'd be able to see their organs. They would be translucent, and if you poked them, you could probably move them around in the gel a little bit. Now, even at this goo or slime-like state, the Entu colonies, they can still communicate, but they do so telepathically. Now, this communication is not done through typical words or speaking. The Entu colony that is growing, they relay their information through feelings, through emotions. And sometimes they can even add some kind of sensory element to it. Not that it would actually hurt you, but they can use it as a form of communication. And just a little bit past this stage, the Entu colony can reproduce by itself. They just split apart. The common age of maturity when it comes to Entu colonies is roughly 6 months after sprouting their first mycelia. Now, Entu colonies, they feed on the emotions, the energies, and the thoughts of those around them, though this is not a parasitic relationship. In fact, some of the creatures that the Entu colonies join with, they merge with, it's all consensual. Remember to practice your safe, sane, and consensual acts. When an Entu colony joins with another creature, their fungus infects the brain. It melds with it, it becomes part of it, and it functions like neurons. This allows the colony control over the body. And the mycelia from the Entu colony, it weaves itself into the nervous system of its host. This allows the colony to feel and to experience what its host feels and experiences. And it's often the case that this process forms new synapses in the brain. This allows the sapient creature that has been taken over by the colony to get the information or get knowledge from the Entu colony, what it has experienced in life before. The creature that has been infected this way, it retains its own consciousness, it retains its memories, and still experiences what's happening to its body. The Entu colony also has its own consciousness that stays within the body. The end result is something called an Entu symbiote. This life form will be slow to grow at first. Maybe it could speak before, maybe it couldn't. But eventually, over time, it can learn. And if this symbiote was to reproduce on its own, often the offspring will still be infected with this Entu colony spores or the fungus, which in some cases has resulted in uplifting entire alien species. Now, uplifted animals or creatures are interesting on their own. These are creatures or animals which have been modified from their original state to have faster cognitive thought, to have complex emotions, full self-awareness, and in some cases, just to make their physical forms better and more suited to working environments. The uplifted bear is the best example of an uplifted species. You can find them in lots of places in the Pact Worlds, though who uplifted them and why has been lost to the gap. What hasn't been lost to the gap is a creature or a species that monitor and supervises all uplifted species to make sure that their own grand design, which is a mystery to everyone else, stays intact. and that would be the Tekoino. This creature becomes involved whenever a sapient species becomes uplifted through whatever means, be it science or fungal infection. And they can also become involved when a species is being held back through some kind of outside force. While they are always monitoring these uplifted creatures or these uplifted species, they only become involved when an unbalance occurs. What constitutes a balance that requires their presence or their stepping in? No one knows. It is only by their own mysterious grand design that they become involved. When these Aeons do decide to get involved, you will only see the presence of one. They will come down, they will gather information, they will gather resources, they will observe. They will then relay their findings to the council, who will make their decision on the future of this uplifted sapient species. Just a little something to think about for uplifted creatures. Now, there is a well-documented example of a species that was uplifted by the Entu colonies, and these would be known as the Entu, originally a species of bat-like creatures who fed on fruit. Early on in their evolution, this species willingly integrated themselves to the Entu colonies. And through this merging, the offspring of the Entu became more intelligent. They grew. The symbiosis was perpetuating. Today, the Entu, they live in tiered jungle cities. They actively farm and cultivate the growth of Entu colonies. They actively consider themselves to be a single species. Now, before we move on to the stats of the Entu colonies or the Entu Symbiote, I have also created a race of bat-like creatures, and if you're interested in looking at that, link will be in the description below. Now, if the Entu colony is the right species for you, let's find out. Here is its stats. For a colony, you're going to get +2 intelligence, +2 charisma, and -2 strength. Now, you're a squishy pile of fungus, so your hit points, they're only going to be 2. Entu colonies are also considered small ooze creatures. They will also get the amorphous ability. Now, this allows the colony to slip into spaces, anything that would require you to maintain your physical shape as a human being or as a humanoid. As an Entu colony, you're just a little bit more blobbious, and you can go into places that are difficult to get to. You also don't take double damage from critical hits. You will also have blind sight emotion for 60 feet. And because you are an ooze, you have some other additional benefits. +2 racial saving throws against illusion, paralysis, poison, polymorph, sleep, and stun effects. Unless, of course, any of those effects are specifically targeted for ooze. Entu colonies, as I mentioned, are telepathic, so they do have limited telepathy for 30 feet. An Entu colony can also tactically merge with a willing host. And when they do this, they can do one of 3 things. They can either heal them, they can give them an advantage for saving throws against an ongoing condition, or they can give them a +2 to their reflex save. Now, the symbiotes, because they are a little different, they will gain +2 to their intelligence only, and because they are not a squishy pile of goop, their hit points go up to 4. A symbiote will get the blind sense emotion for up to 30 feet and low light vision. And because of the effective symbiosis of fungus and creature, they will have +2 to their perception and sense motive checks. And also, because of effective symbiosis, they will have limited abilities for augmentation. The only kind of brain augmentation a symbiote can get is a data jack. The symbiotes also have limited telepathy for up to 30 feet. And as a symbiote, because you are an uplifted species now, you will also have a natural weapon. And depending on what type of creature you are that has effectively had this mold fungus growing in your brain, you will also have a fly speed or a swim speed, a burrow speed, whatever makes sense for that creature type, of up to 20 feet. Now, how long does an Entu colony live for? Well, a colony all on its own, they can live for up to 300 years. But if you're looking at a symbiote, they will only last as long as the host body. Now, if you'd like to know more about the playable races in Starfinder, click on the video on your screen now. Thank you to all of my patrons for supporting me and voting on today's video. My name's Nathaniel. Thanks for stopping by, everyone. If you're still here, you can like and subscribe too.